The Richie Allen Show, live on Talk Radio Europe, Fab Radio International, and DavidIke.com. And now, live from Manchester, England, here is Richie Allen.
Right then, let's get our first guest on the show. I'm really excited about talking to her. We have a mutual friend, Ben Gelbloom. I've mentioned Ben before. Check out voice.com. Ben writes for them. He's written for Fleet Street publications over the years. Well, a good guy, Ben, and he's on the pulse. He's always on top of really important stories like this one. Now, my first guest is a former dominatrix. She makes no bones about that. And she's published a couple of books. The most recent of is her latest book, Whipping Up a Storm. And she's going to be joining me. We're going to be talking about George Osborne, the British Chancellor MP, outgoing MP, probably incoming MP again. We're going to talk phone hacking and why very, very powerful individuals have gone to pretty extraordinary lengths to shut her up. It's a great pleasure to welcome to the programme Natalie Rowe. Natalie, you're welcome. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. It's really good. Now, the book was published, I think, today, yesterday or the day before. I think it's right now the book has come out, is it?
It was published about three days ago, and it's my second book. The first one, Chief Whip, was, in my view, sabotaged, and I wasn't happy. All the names were taken out, removed. They downplayed everything to do with Osborne in particular, without my knowledge, and I wasn't happy, and I felt that the public needed to know the truth. And in this book, my new one, Whipping Up a Storm, it names everyone.
It names everybody.
There are a couple of people that I haven't named simply because, for instance, one banker, he works at Lloyd's of London, but there was somebody that had the same surname as he did, who works for Lloyd's Bank. So I didn't put his surname in because I didn't want some innocent person to be confused. But I've named as many people as I possibly could.
Now, without Osborne aside, we'll talk about Osborne. We'll talk about Osborne in a second, George Osborne.
Sure.
Before we do that, though, I'm going to ask you, and I mentioned this to you today. Don't name anybody whose name has not been in the public, and if you can, Natalie, try and avoid giving any massive clues that might identify them. It's not because I'm in any way trying to protect anybody, but while I don't have any money, and somebody can sue me if they want because I don't have anything, my broadcast partners do, and they might be annoyed. Yeah. And I know you understand.
Well, it's all in the book, so if anyone wants to read the book, the names are in there. So I promise I won't mention anybody on air.
Now, the new book, Whipping Up a Storm, has been published, and it is available from online retailers. That in itself is incredible.
Amazon,
yeah, and you've not had to take out any of those names. That being said, though, you said to me today, and Ben had said to me, you've encountered quite a few problems getting this particular book published. Do you want to give our listeners the gist of what the book is about?
Well, what I wanted, it's not just politicians that are in the book. There are actors and various other kind of men out there that I've been involved with. But I wanted the public to. I don't think anyone's been allowed to write a book where you will have an insight into what these politicians get up to behind closed doors. And it was the hypocrisy of it all that I felt the public should know. And, I've been told not to write the book, pull the book. I've had police raids. I've been arrested twice. Hours on one occasion, another one for 8 hours. Then, no further charges, which is another situation.
This was around the first book, wasn't it? You were locked up around about the time of the first book. And I think I read somewhere, Natalie, that when you got to the station, they didn't even have a complaint against you.
No.
Nothing in writing.
What their reason was is that there was an anonymous, somebody had made a phone call, but I wasn't privy to who that person was, ever. So as far as I'm concerned, they were just plucking out, that was their reason. In my view, if you're going to be arrested for something, at least have some bloody evidence what are you arresting me for? But, luckily for me, I've got some fantastic Twitter followers, and on one of the occasions that I got arrested, I was able to tweet while I was on my way in the police car that I'm being arrested, and the press then got onto it and was calling the station. And I think they realised very quickly, shit. And I got a call, and then basically let me go. But you know what? I'm tougher than that, and I will not be stopped. And I wanted the public to realise and know what the heck these politicians get up to. We've got this situation where they won't legalise prostitution, but on the other hand, they're paying for prostitutes in private.
Many of them are, as we know over the years, not only politicians but captains of industry, people working in the judiciary. And
sure, but
let's talk about George Osborne, right? Let's talk about him.
Sure.
He's I suppose one of the most famous politicians in the country. He's the outgoing, possibly incoming again, Chancellor of the Chancellor of the Exchequer. They're all the same to me, Natalie. Doesn't matter which of them gets in. But anyway, you met him back in the early 90s. So he was a young MP then. He was just entering politics.
And he wasn't an MP at the time.
He wasn't an MP. No, he was.
He wasn't. He was just entering. He was. I think around the time he was working for William Hague.
Right. So tell us about that. And how did you meet him? Under what circumstances?
I met him through my boyfriend at the time, William Sinclair, who's the father of my child. And at some point, William, found out what I was doing. Then George Osborne, knew, and Christopher Coleridge, and it's like my little three musketeers, I call them. And they were very intrigued about the whole scene. And eventually, to cut a long story short, they were very interested in tasting the delights of black women. And so were their friends. So what happened was I started to, introduce my girls who was working for me, the agency Black Beauties, to various friends of William, which included George Osborne, Christopher Coleridge, and then the famous evening was when I sent 3, for want of a better word, hookers to one of the Bullingdon clubs, hosted by Nathaniel Rothschild at Waddesdon Manor, and they treated my girls horribly.
Now, the Bullingdon Club, we will have listeners in different parts of the world who might not know what that is. Do you want to define that, Natalie? Explain what the Bullingdon Club is.
Yeah, well, the Bullingdon Club is anyone you can join if you remember. You have to remember and have gone to Oxford, firstly. And it's a very exclusive club, and they have to go through, I don't know, I mean, I wasn't there, but they have to go through stringent tests or to join that club. And it's basically the elite of society.
It's like an elite fraternity, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. You can't be a Bullingdon member unless you've been to Oxford, and so, I think there was a movie made about it recently, which I didn't watch.
There was. I can't remember the name, but I saw a trailer for it in the cinema. It looked awful. Yeah.
And I think the movie went pretty light on what they're really like in real life, but they feel that they owe that society. That basically, they think that they rule and what they say goes, and everyone else is
behaving obnoxiously, turning up to places, trashing those places. They've trashed many a restaurant and many a bar, and behaving obnoxiously and treating people very badly, acting like the rulers of the world, which I suppose they have ambitions to be, some of them. That'd be pretty much a fair assessment of how these idiots behave, I suppose.
Yeah. What I found extraordinary is that they were quite sort of excited that they had a black woman in their midst, because they hadn't had a chance to meet anyone like me, and they would ask ridiculous questions like, do all black people speak like you? I mean, they just didn't live in the real world.
And would Osborne ask questions like that?
Yeah, well, Osborne asked more than that. I mean, he was very intrigued with the my domination side of, part of my life. And in the book, I have explained, not in full detail. I wasn't trying to spare him embarrassment, but what I didn't want to do was to make the book too pornographic.
Right.
But George Osborne indulged in sexual activities with me, and it's in the book. Now, the last book,
he's denied this, of course. I got to mention this in the interest of fairness. He said that he didn't. He said that he agreed with you that he met you through your boyfriend. It was an interesting character, your former boyfriend, Mr. Sinclair. He's an interesting character himself, isn't he, Natalie? He was
very much so.
His grandfather was a minister in Churchill's government.
Well, he was the leader of the Liberal Party, and he led the coalition party in the Second World War alongside Winston Churchill.
Alongside Churchill, yeah.
Yeah, and so my son's grandfather is the godson of Winston Churchill. William was very colourful. But I will say this, is that George has said that he only knew me for a short time in autumn of 94 or whatever it was. But I can tell you this, that even up until 96, 97, I went to a dinner party because he'd asked me to bring something over there for him, and his now wife was there, and we all wined and dined.
Now, when you say something, we can say this.
Can I say on air?
You can. It's drugs, isn't it?
Yes, it's cocaine.
Cocaine, yeah. We can say this because it's been out there, other news agencies have put it out there, and Osborne has defended it. And because he's defended it, he's acknowledged that the accusation is out there, so we can talk about it now. Again, I'm just going to point out that he said that it never happened. That's what he says.
Well, I'll tell you what's really ridiculous about that is the photograph of me and George Osborne at my flat. The pile of cocaine is actually on a table mat right in front of us. So unless he was oblivious to it being there, which is a lot of nonsense, it's there. I actually tried to hide the cocaine with the plant pot, and that's why the photograph has the flowers in my face, because I didn't want the photographer to pick it up, but fortunately, or unfortunately,
but he did. Yeah.
Yeah. And, he carried on doing this for quite some time, and what I want to say on record now is that if George Osborne calls me a liar ever again, in any public platform, I will see him in court. I've already served George Osborne papers in the past, and it's always been dealt with out of the public view.
Let's just talk now, Natalie, about something very important to all of this. And by the way, I should have pointed out that David Cameron and Boris Johnson are also members of this pretty ugly Bullingdon club, along with Osborne and many others. Yeah. I'll tell you what's really sinister is when you went to the papers with this story, and this is where Andy Coulson comes in. Now, again, for our listeners, to make sure that people can follow this, and I'm not insulting anybody's intelligence, but we have so much stuff going on in our lives, we forget stuff. Andy Coulson was editor of the News of the World. Yeah. He spent some time in prison recently over the phone hacking scandal. This embarrassed the Conservative government because he was given a public relations job in the government by David Cameron. Now, alleged...
Actually, that's not true. That's not true. George Osborne was the person that championed
him getting the job. Yeah, I was coming to that because this is really interesting, because Coulson was one of the guys that ended up with the story, with your story. Yeah. And you allege, and I'm going to be honest with you here, and I shouldn't really do this, but I only do it when I'm certain that one of my guests is telling the truth. What's extraordinary here is they didn't make very much out of Natalie's story whatsoever, even though she had a lot of evidence to back it up. And when you factor that in to the fact that he eventually then, only a few years later, ended up working for the Tories, you've got to wonder. Take it from there, Natalie. So you took the story to the papers.
Yes. It was through Max Clifford, and he was speaking to the News of the World about the story, and then at some point he had a fallout with the News of the World, and then said he was going to take it to the Sunday Mirror, which he did do. And so I then was dealing with the Sunday Mirror to run the story. You've got to remember, I didn't know at the time I was being hacked. I've since found out that I was being hacked because I've seen the police have contacted me and shown me the papers that News of the World were hacking me under the editorship of Andy Coulson.
That's right. Again, this is true now, people. This is all true. This is extraordinary, this.
Yeah. And what I find more extraordinary is that whenever, as the News of the World, ever gone lightly on a politician, ever. And in this situation, the News of the World almost dismissed George Osborne and me as if, it was some fanciful idea in my mind, and, but what they did is that they covered up the story. But what's even more extraordinary is that the editor writes a story about the front page was Coco and a Tory, and then George Osborne then employs him 2 years down the line. Why? Was there no other communication advisor out there?
And a number of listeners have tweeted in, loads of tweets coming in on this now, and emails.
Brilliant.
And they're all saying the same thing. They're all saying that after, having a very indifferent approach to Natalie's story and the tales of, let's be honest, I'm not trying to sensationalise this now, but debauchery and drug taking and bad behaviour. I mean, this is the sort of thing they should collapse in a heap when they get it with joy. It's like winning the lottery for a news editor. But what's interesting about the fact that he dumbed it down, or he didn't dumb it down, he played it down as an editor. What's really interesting then is his career path after that, which is what we were getting into, is what happened to him after that. I'm talking about Coulson, of course.
Yeah.
Where he went after that, yeah.
Well, he went to prison. I mean, apart from the fact he ended up working for George Osborne in the heart of government, who went to prison for hacking. And I can tell you now that on my hacking papers that I've seen, Christopher Coleridge, who was a good friends with William, my boyfriend back then, and George Osborne, the police showed me his name on the paperwork, but redacted every single thing regarding George Osborne. George Osborne has acknowledged that he was hacked, but apparently is too busy running the economy.
That's
the
right.
very man that hacked his phone, he employed.
That's pretty. I mean, it's incredible. Then you factor Max Clifford into it, then, and what happened to Clifford. People will say, Natalie, some people will say, if we forget just how horrible these people are and what they represent, and for me now, because we will have Conservative Party supporters listening to this in southern Spain, they're all the same. The idiot Miliband brother who's standing against them, and Farage and the rest of them, what they represent, they're all representing the same thing. This isn't an attack on the Conservative Party. It's an attack on these people in general. And what they do.
I'd want to make it clear that I'm not trying to attack the Conservatives, because, it just happens that all the men that used my services were Tories.
Yeah.
Had there been Labour politicians, I would have said the same thing. What I'm trying to let everybody know is that it's the hypocrisy and the downright contempt for the public, that you can have one rule set on the public voters out there and another rule for them.
Well, it's terribly corrupt. And if that's your absolute motivation, nobody could have any problem with it. But I'm
also motivated by the fact that George Osborne basically is calling me a liar, and I won't stand for it.
You made these allegations before he became a minister, before he became Chancellor of the Exchequer. So let me ask you this.
Yep,
let me ask you this.
Yep, from 2005.
That's right, from 2005. No, it's not new. Now, this is not me saying this, but some listeners might say, is this not a bit shabby? Forget who these people are and what they represent. Natalie did well out of these people. She made a good career out of it. Why then, turn on these guys? Particularly as you turned on Osborne before he got into government and before, we could see what the guy is. Now, I'm just asking you that as a devil's advocate. It's not my opinion necessarily. Why turn on him then?
Why turn on them? Well, the harassment that I've suffered didn't help matters, number one. And number two, my book initially was about my life story, which would have covered a lot of people. My book isn't just about George Osborne and Tory politicians. It has actors and other kind of people in there. But I didn't turn on them. The fact is that it's a book about my life and includes them. But the one person, and there are plenty of people in there, the one person that's been very vocal in trying to dismiss me, basically as not telling the truth, is George Osborne. He is pretty much very vital and important to this country. Well, was, hopefully never again. And I think I'm just trying to let nobody can ever write this book that I'm going to write, because A, they probably wouldn't have the balls, and B, the odds of it happening again is pretty slim. I thought that it was a time for people to know the real truth about the behaviour of those guys. It's not a Tory bashing book. It's a book about my life, and they're in it. Let
me ask you this, because this is really interesting now. The relationship between people who work in positions of authority, whether it's, very, very, very senior authority, government positions, whether it's lawyers, judges. Natalie, there seems to be, and I've noticed this over the years as a journalist myself, there seems to be a real relationship between those people and sadomasochism and violence in sex. Nobody, I suppose, is better placed to comment on that than you because you worked as a dominatrix. Why do you think that is?
Well, you can't generalise every individual. I mean, I can't put them all in one pot and say they're all the same. But the common theme that I've realised was that they live in a world where they have to make hard decisions, and normally they're in very powerful positions, and they just want to relinquish that control. It's like, go back to sort of being, not in control, and so they come to kind of just reverse the roles, and it kind of energizes them, and then they go back out and do what they do, the next day. I'm not a psychiatrist, and I can't pretend to know exactly why these guys, but I will tell you one thing: I've never had a dustbinman or somebody in a very not that.
Well, they probably couldn't afford you, Natalie.
No,
dustmen, to be honest.
What I mean is, it's men of power, and it's just I think it's just a way of relinquishing their control for half an hour, an hour or two. But I can't tell you why. I admit that they paid very well. And people will also say, well, why is she talking about them? Where's this secrecy, the code of secrecy?
Yeah, which is what I was getting at a few minutes ago, yeah.
Well, to be honest with you, I could have put a lot more people in that book. And I have tried to stick to naming the bankers and the politicians, because our economy and our country is run by those guys.
Let me ask you this. This is important now again. In light of everything that's going on at the moment with the historic child sex abuse inquiry, I have to ask you this. Did you ever hear anything, Natalie? Did you ever sense anything that some of these people were interested in, younger boys or younger girls? I mean, you were in a position to provide entertainment for these men. Did any of them ever say to you that they'd prefer a younger girl or a younger boy? Or did you ever get that feeling about any of these people?
Well, firstly, I want to just stress this. I have never supplied anybody to any underage male or female to any of my clients, but I will admit that I was asked to supply young boys and girls to...
Don't name names now.
No, I won't. To various 2 or 3 of my clients in particular.
And were they clients whom were important people, political people or wealthy people?
2 of them were... Well, one of them is connected to people in politics. One was involved in banking, very high in that institution, and one was a politician. But at no point did I ever indulge them in that at all. I
don't doubt you. And they were shameless about this, Natalie. They were able to come up to you as a woman. And first of all, you're a woman, so you've got that maternal thing. They were able to come up and say, I want to, be introduced to a young boy or a young girl. And they had no shame.
It was very subtle, and obviously these guys didn't come out just on day one. It was after maybe a couple of years, or I mean, it's very difficult to say something because I think I've mentioned somebody in the book. But what I did do, I was advised by someone to take out the bit about him being a paedophile. And so I've removed it out. So if I talk about that individual now in the context of the book, you'll know who that person is. But I found that, the most disgusting type of character. And that's why I felt it was, I would have loved to put it in the book, and he knows who he is. But for me, that's the one thing that I find disgusting.
Now, it's not gone in the book, but have you considered, and I'm not trying to turn this now down a dark road, but I've got to ask this since I brought it up and you've answered it. You couldn't put it in the book, but this person you're thinking of, have you written to or phoned the people running Operation U3 or any of those to say, listen, back in the day, there were some guys that were asking me about children, you might want to have a look at them?
No, I haven't actually. I haven't. I'll admit that I haven't, because, I've got no proof because I never supplied him with any. So I don't have any evidence that he actually acted out on it.
Yeah, and to be fair to you as well, if you ring somebody up now and say, back in 1992 or whatever, some guy mentioned children to me, that's very... I won't say it's dubious.
When I say children, he didn't say children. He said could you find me a 15, 16-year-old? I mean, he didn't go like 8 or 9. And I just said, no, that's just never going to happen.
But that's a child anyway. It's illegal anyway.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's something that I would happily do. I think they would say to me, go get on your bike. I mean, where's your evidence?
Yeah, which I was saying there. Yeah, it's one thing to ring them up and say that. It's another thing to be able to prove it. I'm
quite happy to. I mean, if they want to ask me, I will happily give them the names. Without a doubt, I wouldn't have a problem.
Well, thanks for answering that, Natalie. I want to ask you one other question. These are genuine. It's coming in from Angela. There's loads and loads of comments from people who are saying they're going to go and get the book. I could read them all out. You can go on my Twitter and you'll see them later on. Loads of people. But Angela says, again, in light of what we're hearing about the child sexting, I don't want to dwell too much on this, but she says...
You do know that I didn't expect you to be asking me this question.
No, I do, and I'm
fine. I'm pretty open. I'm
not trying to use the term Shanghai you or...
to answer it.
Yeah. And if you had to taught me where to go there, I would have had no problem with that.
I'm going to be completely open and direct about everything. I'm happy to do that.
But we're talking about prominent men. Going to Brussels and interest in S&M activity, it was bound to come up, and I was bound. I had to ask that. Finally, on that, Angela says, did you see any hints, or did any of the games ever have, a devil worship or satanic element to them? Were any of these guys interested in playing the devil or any of that sort of stuff? Did you ever come across any of that?
No, actually, no.
End of. Fair enough, yeah.
That's a very odd question, but no, I didn't. That would have freaked me out, but no.
Yeah, the reason listeners are asking that is because there's a widespread belief that a lot of the paedophilia, that there is a satanic element to it. There's a lot of evidence to that. A lot of listeners saying they're loving that you're doing it. People should know exactly who these guys are. If anybody deserves to be outed when they're, breaking the law, it's politicians, because obviously they lecture, they preach, and they get elected based on seemingly a sound character and a high moral character. What do you think will happen now, Natalie? I mean, a couple of people have said, I'm going to buy the book before it's taken off of Amazon.
Have I said the name of the book? Whipping Up a Storm?
Whipping Up a Storm, you have.
Whipping Up a Storm on Amazon, Kindle paperback, Natalie Rowe.
And I'm linked into it on Facebook and on Twitter.
I'd advise you to buy it real quick, because I think the election, after the election, you never know, maybe they'll try and ban it. I don't know.
And that's what some listeners are saying, yeah.
On their hands.
That's what some listeners are saying. They're saying, anybody who wants to get it, better get it now, in case they decide to pull it extraordinarily, yeah. So what about you then? I mean, where do you go from here then, Natalie? I mean, I think it's a brave thing you've done. I think it's a noble thing you've done.
I felt absolutely compelled. I couldn't not tell. I just felt, if I didn't tell, when would anybody else have the opportunity to, or dare? I just felt it's something that, I don't know, it was something that I felt needed to be told is the truth, and people need to know. And I think I've been pretty mild in what I've written compared to what really goes on. I mean, I'm not the only girl that has seen a politician. There are hundreds out there, if not thousands. And I just felt that at least I give my little piece out there so people can have a good insight, as to what goes on. And I wish I'd been able to do it sooner, but it's now, and I hope people, read it and take it for what it is. It's not a hard book. It's a romp. You can read. There's a lot of other interesting characters in there, and it's a story that needs to be told. You've got politicians that are ex-Tories and sitting politicians now that are in government, and also the people that want to tell us what to do, who are they? They can't tell us what to do when they're doing the complete opposite. And I just felt it was something that I had to get out.
Brilliant stuff, Natalie. The book is Whipping Up a Storm. I'll put it on Twitter, the link to it on Amazon, written by Natalie Rowe. The follow-up, of course, to the earlier book.
Don't plug the other one, because that was the one they sabotaged.
That's the one they sabotaged anyway. No, I'm just mentioning it was a follow-up, but Whipping Up a Storm.
You can't buy that anymore. It's never going to be bought over again. Forget that one.
So it's Whipping Up a Storm, and you'll be able to find it on Amazon.com or .co.uk. I wish you all the success in the world with the book, Natalie. Thanks for writing it, and thanks for coming on here to talk about it. Very important stuff. Thank you.
And thank you very much for having me. I'm so appreciative. Thank you so much.
Not at all. Bye for now. Natalie Rowe on the line to us from her home in London. It's 4.5 minutes to the top of the hours. And that very interesting now, despite everything that Osborne and his mates at the Bullingdon Club were up to, the behaviour, much of which I suppose anybody who's been reading David's books for years won't be surprised by any of that. But the minute we asked the question about did any of these people ever request, children under the age of consent, and she was pretty categoric there, pretty straight up with the answer, and the answer was, of course, yes.
This is the public perception which needs to change, and I completely understand why this perception is held by people. They judge the number of children that go missing by the number of missing children stories on the mainstream news, in the mainstream media. So Madeleine McCann is a big story, yeah. Madeleine McCann is the tip of the tip of the tip of the tip of the tip, and I could go on for hours, of the iceberg.
But as long as we allow the psychopaths who run the world to have an infinite supply of money, they will continue to supply us with an infinite dose of absolute nutcase, totally servile, disgusting, amoral son of a bitches who will support whatever script and agenda they put in front of them. And that's what we have.
With vaccines, vaccinations, and the whole controversy about vaccinations in the alternative media. Before I do that, I want to play you a clip. This is Tony Abbott. If you don't know who he is, don't worry about it. He's a politician. He happens to be the Prime Minister of Australia. And recently, in fact only a couple of days ago, alanshow.com/donate, and you can use PayPal, or there are bank account details there if you want to use those. But please do consider helping to keep the programme on the air. It's a terrifically successful programme, I can say that without any ego. To this point, it's getting an enormous audience, and it's going out on more and more and more networks. In fact, we're adding networks all the time. So I need your help to keep it going. At the moment, no sponsorship, entirely listener funded. Go to richiealanshow.com/donate and make a contribution if you can. Thank you for doing it.